Hello once again, Jim Townsend here. My website is at townsend.b and you can email me at jim@townsend.b. I also have websites at gentiledefenseleague.com, gentiledefenseleague.net, and gentiledefenseleague.org. I want to talk to you about definitions. You see, if you and I use different meanings for words, and we use those words to construct a sentence, and I have constructed a sentence using my meanings, and you have listened to it using your meanings, it is quite easy for us to miscommunicate with each other because we don't have a common understanding of terms. So when I wrote my first book, Freedom Canada, one of the things that I did is I went to Black's Law Dictionary. You see, because in our what we call lawful jural societies, which are not in fact lawful jural societies but are called such, whenever we come to disagreements, all final the venue for solving those disagreements ends up to be the court. So when all decisions in a society are made by a court, all power eventually devolves to the judiciary. So if we are going to have a discussion, then it seems to make sense to me to use a legal dictionary of definitions. If you get yourself a Black's Law Dictionary so that you can find out these definitions for yourself. Now the definitions are out of the 6th edition of Black's Law Dictionary. When I wrote my first book, somebody came to me and he said, "Jim, I read Black's Law Dictionary. That's not the definitions that they had." So I went back and got another version of Black's Law Dictionary, and he was right. They'd actually changed the definitions. You see, Black's Law Dictionary is copyright British law. So they don't like the definition of something, they just change it. Now, it is not tenable that you apply laws to men unless they are fixed and certain. And not only are what passes for our laws not fixed and certain, not even the dictionary definitions are fixed and certain. So we are at our absolute jeopardy. So I want to discuss a couple of definitions that you find in the 6th edition of Black's Law Dictionary. I'm going to write them down on my hand as I do. So the first definition that we want is the definition of a state, or the definition of free. Let's start with the definition of free, because you see, it's all about freedom. I know that as a Canadian that freedom is my birthright. I also know that as a Canadian that generations of my fellow countrymen have given their lives. They've paid the penultimate price for my birthright, and that birthright is freedom. And in order to protect that birthright of mine, I have to know what it is. So if I go look up the definition of free in Black's Law Dictionary, it says, not subject to the legal constraint of another. A legal constraint is legislation. Free men are not subject to legislation. A subject is a slave. So how is it that we live in the most highly legislated societies on the face of the earth and yet believe we are free? Mind manipulation? Maybe somebody playing with definitions so we're all confused all the time? Okay, let's move on to the next definition, the definition of a state. What is a state? A state is a people in a given geographical area. A state. You and I, the people of Canada, are the people of the free state. And that should indicate to you how you maintain a free state, right there. Now, if free men are not subject to the legal constraint of another, and you and I are born free and equal, it seems obvious that we cannot arbitrarily assign rules and regulations for everybody else to follow. So how do we get along in a society if free men are self-governing? Of course, I pick a pen that isn't working. Well, that's really easy. Have you ever heard of the golden rule? There we go, a permanent marker. This will be right on my hand forever. A golden rule. So how does a free state govern itself? With the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you is the only expectation. And unless you do another human being an injury, you can never lawfully be compelled to court. Now, when free men get together and they form a corporate government, what they do is they write a constitution. Now, a constitution is the body of law written by the state to control the government. See, constitution, body of law written by the state to control the government. See, if you and I, the people of Canada, have not written a constitution, we don't have one. Keep in mind that the British Crown of Israel and their Jewish monarchs wrote the constitution of the corporation called Canada. Now, why would free men get together and form a government to govern themselves? Well, it's quite obvious that they wouldn't. Free men get together and they form lawful governments in order to govern the civil service. The civil service are employees of the state. Who are the government? They are elected representatives of the state, elected to govern the civil service. So here we have all of our definitions on our hands. And I would suggest that you write down these definitions, because with these simple definitions, you cannot be fooled as to what you are as a free man, what the proper position of the government and the civil service are. You see, the Constitution is the body of law written by the state to control the government. And the government governs the civil service. Whenever you have the government playing in the Constitution, no, that's your employees that are telling you what to do now. So keep in mind these simple definitions, because we're going to use these definitions as I go through these short vignettes to explain to you what a lawful jural society is, what the true law is. If we look at the definition of lawful is predicated upon what's morally and ethically correct. Legal is simply the written form of the law. Well, I submit to you, when the written form of the law does not match the intent of the law, then it is invalid. You see, the law is predicated upon intent. If you go into court, you are presumed innocent. And they examine, did you commit a crime with intent? You see, there's a dictum, errare humanum est, to err is human. You're allowed to make mistakes, but you're not allowed to sit down with mens rea, malice of forethought, and plot the demise of another person. The true law is predicated upon what's morally and ethically correct, and that's why these shyster lawyers operating this legal system franchise undermine the morals and the ethics of our society, because by doing so, you undermine a people's ability to have a true law system. So there you have 5 simple little definitions. Free, not subject to the legal constraint of another. State, a people in a given geographical area. Constitution, body of law written by the state to control the government. Government, elected officials elected to govern the civil service. And the only expectations that a free state can have of the private members of the free state is that they follow the golden rule. See, we've been divided and conquered. We've been divided up into John Q. Public and Jim R. Private. And all that's happening in our country is John Q. Public, what is supposed to be our civil service are merely the employees of a foreign corporation, and they are attacking us under color and guise of law. Running out of time for this 10-minute vignette. Peace, y'all. Love you.